Welcome back to another episode of the Sunday Stache. This is episode number 27, and today, as usual, had some Champions League stuff this past week, so that's what I'm going to go ahead and talk about. It was the Champions League quarterfinal, and I want to talk about that, and then the second thing I want to talk about is the European Super League that everybody's been talking about in reference to the Big 12 teams that have decided they want to separate themselves out from UEFA and form their own Super League where they play a different competition and everything like that. So there's 12 teams, 12 large teams that have actually come out in support of that. So I'll talk about that in a little bit. So anyway, I'll jump right into the Champions League stuff. This was the second leg of the quarterfinal. So we had Bayern Munich against PSG. This particular match actually ended in a win for Bayern Munich since they had a 1-0 victory over PSG. But that means that PSG won an aggregate with a score of 3-3. The reason for this is because of the away goals rule. PSG scored 3 goals away against Bayern Munich, and only one goal that Bayern Munich had scored was away. So I guess the theory is that it's more difficult to score away goals and everything. It doesn't really make much sense because I don't think there's really many fans that are in the stadium. So away goals aren't really all that much. It just means that you're not really traveling far away from your home stadium. So away goals are what they are. So anyway, PSG won on aggregate 3-3 on away goals. The only goal came in the 40th minute off of the head of Moting. I'm not exactly sure how to pronounce his name. There was a shot on goal, and Navas had actually blocked it, and it deflected it up in the air, and Moting was actually just in the right place at the right time, and he headed the ball into the net. When I first saw it, I actually thought it was going to be a foul because it looked like he was kind of forced his way through and actually had kind of like knocked somebody down, but actually viewing it the second time, it actually appeared as though, to me, everything was clean and everything was good to go. So it did appear totally clean, and everything was good with that. Nothing else happened in the first half regarding goals. There were a few times that were almost goals. Neymar came close a few times. He hit the crossbar and hit the post or something like that, but nothing actually went through. In the second half, things started about the same when Neymar came close to getting a goal, but ended up coming up a little short with the ball when it went across the face of the goal, and he was not really close enough to actually hit it in. It looked as though Bayern Munich was like falling apart at that point, but they weren't. So anyway, around the 78th or 79th minute, Mbappe took off on a break from about midfield, and he had the goalie in a 2-on-1. So it was him. I don't remember who the other player was with Mbappe, but it was him plus another PSG player and the goalie. So, and then he took a shot, and it actually went into the back of the net, but he was ruled to be offsides, so that ended up getting called back and didn't actually count. The stats for this game were actually pretty even, a little more even than the first match. The first match, Bayern was out of control and shot a ton. Here, they just had 14 shots and 5 were on target, and that was for Bayern, and then there's 10 shots and 3 shots on target for PSG. Possession was roughly even, and I would say the only thing that was uneven were the number of fouls, which isn't really too much of a surprise since Bayern played pretty rough. They were behind. Bayern had 21 fouls to the 10 that PSG had. So when you're playing from behind, you kind of have to play a little more difficult or play a little harder, and it is more difficult. So I understand why they were playing a little more rough. Overall, the strategy of this match is different for both teams. PSG came in knowing that Bayern needs to score at least 2 goals. So PSG can afford to play a little bit defensive in this match. They didn't totally play a defensive match, though. I will say that Neymar should have actually probably had 2 or 3 goals just for himself. He was all over in front of Bayern's goal the whole time. He hit the post a few times. He hit the crossbar. It was actually a pretty exciting match, but inevitably Bayern Munich ends up moving on. Not Bayern Munich. PSG moves on. I was thinking because I thought Bayern Munich was going to end up winning, and yeah, I'm wrong. So anyway, PSG is the team that actually moves on. The next game we have is Chelsea versus Porto. This match ended in a win for Porto, which was a 1-0, but that also means that Chelsea gets to move on aggregate because the total score was 2-1. Chelsea had scored 2 goals in the previous match. Porto scored 1 in this one. So Chelsea wins on aggregate and moves on. I felt this match was pretty uninteresting all the way up until the bicycle kick in the 93rd minute by Mehdi Taremi. And that was actually a pretty good cross, and he had this nice looking bicycle kick or overhead kick that ended up going to the corner of the net. So it's really nice to see that. Good goal, but it ended up not being enough for Porto. Chelsea had some chances and Porto had some chances, but only one of them actually found the back of the net. Porto needed at least 2 goals to tie and push it to extra time, but they could only get the one. The stats on this game were pretty much dead even, and 8 shots and 1 on target for Chelsea, 2 shots on target for, I think it was 8 shots on target, 8 shots total for Porto and 2 on target for Porto. So 8-1 and 8-2. This match is pretty much the same as PSG and Bayern. Chelsea really only needed to play a defensive match. It wouldn't be, it would be nice to have that little insurance goal, but they didn't really need it, and all they needed to do was keep Porto from scoring 2 goals. All they needed to do was all they needed to do was keep them from scoring more than 1 goal. So that's what they did, and Chelsea moves on to the next round. Liverpool and Real Madrid. This match actually ended in a win for neither team because it was 0-0. There were no goals scored in this match. Inevitably, that ends up meaning that Real Madrid, they won on aggregate, and they are going to be moving forward with a score of 3-1, which was the same score as the previous match. There were definitely some chances. Right at the beginning, there was a really, really good chance by Mane and Salah, but Courtois ended up coming in and deflecting it. He is actually a pretty good goalie. I know I don't necessarily give him a lot of credit because I liked Navas, but Courtois is actually a pretty good goalie. No big mistakes or anything like that by Alice in this match. He actually played pretty well and stopped a few really good shots on goal. There was another really good attempt by Firmino at the beginning of the second half, but yet again, Courtois ended up stepping in and deflecting that. Liverpool dominated possession, shots, passing, corners, and fouls. They were facing elimination, and playing from behind isn't really easy. So they needed to hold possession. They needed to make those shots. They needed to do all that stuff. Now we have Real Madrid moving on. With Liverpool currently sitting in 6th place in the Premier League, things are not looking good for them for next year. They're not too far out since they are 1 win away from basically moving above Chelsea and West Ham United. They have to win, and Chelsea and West Ham United have to lose their next match for Liverpool to be able to jump into 4th place. The trouble is they need to start winning these league matches, and they really haven't been doing it. I think it will be a little bit odd not to see Liverpool in the Champions League next year if they end up not actually making it into the Champions League for qualification purposes. It's going to be a little bit odd to do it, but especially with the amount of talent that they have. So the same kind of goes for Tottenham, and the same kind of goes for Arsenal. They have a lot of good talent, and they're just not really there right now. Finally, we have the last match of this little lineup here. It's Borussia Dortmund and Manchester City. This match ended in a win for Manchester City with a victory of 2-1, and that means that Manchester City won on aggregate with a total score of 4-2. The first goal of the match came fairly early from Jude Bellingham in the 15th minute, and it was I think it was a deflection, and he ended up just putting it right in the back of the net. Fairly nice looking goal. So anyway, this kid's only 17 years old, so I'm actually looking forward to what it's going to look like for him in the future. And that might be the reason why Borussia Dortmund is willing or able to end up losing Erling Haaland, because they have somebody who might be able to replace him. After that goal, Dortmund was going to be moving on since they had scored an away goal, and in the previous match, they had scored 1 goal. So that means that they had 1 away and 1 home, and because the previous match had been an away game, which was a home game for Manchester City, now they were tied 2-2. Their happiness, I guess, lasted all the way up until the 55th minute when Manchester City were awarded a penalty and it was awarded for a handball, which it's kind of the suckiest way of getting a penalty awarded for you, or against you, I guess. For you want a penalty for any reason. And I'm not really the biggest fan of this call. I understand it, but I'm not really a fan of it. It came off the guy's head and it hit his arm like in the bicep area. So it's just kind of odd because like you can hit the ball with your shoulder and it not be considered a handball or anything like that. But his arm was in a very unnatural position, so it kind of looked as though he was trying to like pull a fast one. And it ended up getting seen by the referee, and it turns out that they awarded Manchester City a penalty for it, and Mahrez ended up scoring on that penalty. So kind of sucked for Borussia Dortmund and that one particular guy, because it really sucks to kind of give up a goal on such a stupid thing. But handballs are what they are. You're not allowed to use your hands in the game. You're not allowed to put your arms in an unnatural position like that. It sucks that it happens in the box, but that's the way the game works. The next goal and the final goal came in the 75th minute when Foden took a pass from like a corner kick, and he was actually right around somewhere near the 18-yard, the corner of the 18-yard box, and he took a power shot and hit it right towards the near post there, and it actually straight past the goalie. Basically the nail in the coffin for Dortmund. They could have scored a lot more. They have the talent to be able to do that. It's just unlikely that they were going to be able to do that. So Man City, in my opinion, dominated this match. They had 62% of the possession and completed almost 300 more passes than Dortmund did. Manchester City was definitely the stronger team. That's all the matches right there. Moving on from here, we have one French team with PSG, we have one Spanish team with Real Madrid, and we have two English teams with Chelsea and Manchester City. We have some pretty good matchups coming up, and honestly, I would say that the final should be this first match that I'm going to talk about here, which is Manchester City versus PSG. I kind of feel as though these are probably the best two teams in this competition. Manchester City is on the top of the Premier League with an 8-point lead on second place, which that's pretty good in my opinion. They also have a goal differential of plus 44, and I would say they are totally dominant in league play. One negative thing is that they recently lost to Chelsea 1-0 in the FA Cup semifinal, but teams normally don't play their number one people. Their A squad. They usually play a couple of people from the A squad and then a few guys from their backups. So, but maybe that means that Chelsea's backups are better than Manchester City's backups. I don't know. I'm not necessarily going to touch on that too much. PSG, on the other hand, they are in second place in League One, but only by 1 point, and they actually have a goal differential of plus 49. So this match could be pretty high scoring. If they're not really careful. For what it's worth, PSG is still in the French Cup right now. I think that Manchester City is going to end up winning this one. I don't think that this is... I do think that this is basically the final. It's just what it is. I think these are the two best teams. The team that wins this will likely end up winning it all. So the other match that we have is Real Madrid and Chelsea. So Real Madrid is currently in second place in La Liga, and by 3 points, and they have a goal differential of plus 29. They have skill, and a lot of their team has been here before, so they have this, they've performed at this top level before, so they have a lot of experience with it. The one issue with Real Madrid is their injuries. I don't necessarily think that that's going to end up affecting them all that much. Chelsea, currently in 5th place in the Premier League with a goal differential of plus 19, which isn't necessarily too bad. It is the lowest position of anybody in this final Champions League stuff, as well as the lowest goal differential. But they have been playing really well since Thomas Tuchel took over. But I don't really know if they have it in them. They just barely pulled past Porto. They beat Manchester City, but like I said before, Manchester City wasn't really playing their best. Then again, neither was Chelsea. Like I said, it's usually the backup goalie and then some second-string guys. But anyway, since Thomas Tuchel took over, they have beat some of the big names. So they beat Tottenham, Liverpool, Atletico Madrid twice, Porto twice, Manchester City, they beat them most recent weekend, and Everton. I know Everton may not necessarily be on the top of everybody's list of good teams, but they aren't really all that bad. So I'd say that's a team to put in the win a good team to put in the win column. Maybe they are a different team, but I'm not really giving them the credit that they deserve, but I think that Real Madrid's going to end up winning this match. Don't get me wrong, I'm a Chelsea fan. Out of all the teams that are here, I would like to see Chelsea win. I just don't think that they're going to be able to get past Real Madrid. And even if they do get past Real Madrid, I don't think that they've got enough to beat PSG or Manchester City, especially Manchester City when they're playing their top guys. It's just my opinion. I don't really know. Funny enough, Thomas Tuchel was the actual former coach of PSG until recently. So Chelsea have no major injuries and no major suspensions, whereas Real Madrid do. They are on a streak, and that could end up playing a role in this. I just don't necessarily think that they're going to end up doing it. I think that Real Madrid is just too explosive. Chelsea have been drawing a lot of matches and winning by like 1 or 2 goals. So they don't really have that explosive, I'm going to score a lot of goals ability like someone like Real Madrid does. And Real Madrid only needs 1 game to score a lot of goals, because if they do, then that's pretty much it. Anyway, I think that we're going to end up seeing Manchester City and Real Madrid in the final, and then with that, I think that Manchester City is actually going to end up winning the final all out. Even though I do think that Real Madrid has a lot of skill, and Karim Benzema, for somehow, the guy ends up finding himself in the right place at the right time all the time. Anyway, that's the Champions League right there. Now I'm actually going to talk about, I guess it's the competition for the Champions League. So moving on to the final topic, on April 18th, which technically is today when I'm recording this, it was confirmed that the Super League that has been talked about for the past few years has a lot of big clubs that have come out and are actually backing it now. There have been 12 teams that have signed on as the founding teams, and they're expecting a few more to be added. So those 12 teams are Arsenal, Chelsea, Liverpool, Manchester City, Manchester United, Tottenham, AC Milan, Inter Milan, Juventus, Atletico Madrid, Barcelona, and Real Madrid. There are some pretty big names right there. I think it's important to note here that this will not end up replacing their national league, like their league play. So teams like Real Madrid and Barcelona are still going to play against each other in La Liga with teams like Valencia, Eibar, and Granada. That won't change. What they will be doing is playing in the middle of the week, sometime from August to May, and basically this competition is a direct competitor to the UEFA Champions League. Now, this is my understanding of it. I personally, up until today when I got the ESPN notification about this, I hadn't heard anything about a Super League or anything about anybody talking about a Super League. But then as I started doing some research about it, I had read that there was a lot of, this has been talks from like the 90s and stuff, where people have been talking about doing this for a while. So because it's a direct competitor to the UEFA Champions League, which I personally think is a pretty good competition, UEFA decided to come out with a statement. Now, I'm not going to read the whole statement or anything like that. I'll essentially just give the gist of it. But basically what they said was that the Spanish League, La Liga, the Italian League, League One, Serie A, like all these places, a lot of these teams have essentially, a lot of these leagues have banded together and basically said, we don't want you to do this. That's essentially that's the breakdown of this message. They said, we will consider all measures available to us at all levels, both judicial and sporting, in order to prevent this from happening. Football is based on open competition and sporting merit. It cannot be any other way. As previously announced by FIFA and the 6 confederations, the clubs concerned will be banned from playing in any competition at domestic, European, or world level and their players could be denied the opportunity to represent their nations. And their last little bit is essentially saying, hey, all you thanks German teams and French teams for not signing on to this. Basically you 12 big teams, you're putting your wants and your needs and your basically everything about you're being very selfish with doing this. Because I guess the way that everything is structured right now, it benefits a lot of people and a lot of different teams as opposed to benefiting just a few teams. So anyway, that's UEFA's statement. You can go to their website and you can actually find it right now as is. It's basically, sounds to me like it's a threat. Hey, if you guys do this, you're not playing with us anymore. And that's pretty crazy. In my opinion, that's wild. They're threatening these teams from banning them from all competition. That's league play, that's international play, the World Cup. We have the World Cup coming up next year. Obviously UEFA doesn't really have the jurisdiction over the World Cup, over FIFA in the World Cup, but I bet that they probably have a decent amount of influence. So let's say they actually do this, and UEFA did ban these 12 clubs. That's basically all of the biggest names in the game, right? Obviously, minus the French teams and the German teams. And realistically, the fans would probably go insane. With the number of people worldwide that love those 12 teams, UEFA would not see any revenue generated from them playing. The domestic leagues would suffer some. When Real Madrid comes to town, right, the stadiums are packed. People want to see them. Imagine in England, if you got rid of Arsenal, Liverpool, Chelsea, Manchester City, Manchester United, and Tottenham, not to mention that a lot of people actually come to stadiums and come to see these games specifically to see people like Ronaldo and Messi play. Granted, obviously Ronaldo and Messi don't play in England. People come specifically to see certain players that they like. That's what they do. And the players that they like, some of them are on these big teams. If those guys got banned, it would be wild. So try to convince me that the Premier League would be the same without those 6 teams. With all that being said, I think that those 12 clubs, all of those, would have to be able to survive on the revenue brought in from one competition if UEFA actually sticks to their threat. From what I've been reading, this seems to be based on greed from the large clubs. They're basically looking to get a larger piece of the pie from the UEFA Champions League revenue and not have it redistributed as much as it is right now down to the lower leagues and clubs. Now, don't get me wrong. From what I understand, the lower leagues and clubs would still get money, but the larger teams and the larger clubs would get more. So these 12 would end up getting more. And it also kind of sounds like the way the structure is that kind of what Liverpool's having to deal with right now, where it's possible that they're not playing in Champions League next year. And Arsenal joined into this. Arsenal's not playing in Champions League this year. It would basically mean that they get to play in it every single year. Say they break away and form this Super League, and they play also regular domestic play. This would allow the big teams the ability to pay players crazy amounts of money because they're getting more of the pie. Long term, I actually feel like it might develop a weaker system overall because the youth teams wouldn't be getting the revenue and assistance from all of these bigger teams. I know that in the statement from the Super League, they had said that they would do uncapped solidarity payments, but anytime there is money involved, the powerful are always going to try and take more and more pieces of the pie for themselves. So I don't think that this is going to end up working out in this like utopian way that these 12 big teams think that it's going to. And they don't, I just don't think it's going to work out good for the small clubs and small teams that are out there. I like the fact that a small team like Eibar can actually push their way into the top flight and play in La Liga and hold their own with clubs like Barcelona. I don't know. Say it all changes and UEFA actually sticks to their threat and bans those clubs. I can see it going mainly 2 different directions, I guess. So the first one is some players stick with their team as long as the teams are paying them, but eventually they will not have the revenue to keep the big names, as in those big players, at the clubs, and the clubs would eventually dissolve and be replaced by others. Eventually, things would go back to essentially what we have right now with UEFA and the Champions League. Now, the other one, which I think would probably actually be more likely to happen because all of these clubs are more financially, I guess, motivated to have option 2 be the result, and it would kind of be like what we have in the US. So the Super League is the only thing that these players can actually participate in. So what they do is they end up expanding the number of teams, and they expand the number of games, and that's all they play. And because those teams have such a huge following, they develop the same type of system that we have here in the U.S., and it would essentially mirror something like the NBA, the NFL, the MLB, or the NHL. It would be a different number of games and everything like that. Obviously, the NFL plays, I think, 16 games. The NBA plays 84 games. MLB plays 162, and then NHL, I'm not 100% sure how many they play. I think what would end up happening is if you cut out these players' ability to play international as well as club play against other European clubs as well as the national play, that leaves them a lot of opportunity to play against each other. And what they could do is they could actually do something like the MLB does, and play, well, not MLB, but the NBA, and they would play a decent amount of games every single week. I don't think that's a good idea. What do I know? I'm an American, and I don't really understand the way the European system works. I do wish that the U.S. would actually develop a system kind of like what Europe has with the promotion and relegation, but they never will. Your team can suck all year, and the only thing that you're going to do is get the first draft pick. Now, with that, I'm specifically speaking about the NFL, because you can be the New York Jets, and you win one game or 2 games or something like that, and now you've ruined your chances at the number 1 draft pick, and now you're going to settle for number 2 draft pick, something like that. It's ridiculous the way that things happen in the U.S. And I don't want to say that it's ridiculous that there's no repercussions, but you essentially are never going to end up not having revenue if you suck. Whereas in Europe, say Eibar, I think I looked at that earlier today. Eibar is actually in last place on La Liga, and what's going to end up happening is next year, most likely they're going to end up not moving, they're going to end up getting relegated, and they're not going to end up playing in the top flight, which means that their revenue is going to go down. They have an incentive to continue to play hard, and they have an incentive to want to win and want to get out of the relegation zone. The Jets had no incentive. The Jaguars had no incentive to do that this year. You actually have the incentive to tank the season specifically so that you can end up getting something good. So I kind of feel as though our system works a little bit stupid. So one thing that I didn't mention was the fact that some of the larger teams, I kind of touched on it a little bit, but larger clubs in Germany and in France are not included in this list, in that 12. They could be included in the other, I think it's 3 that's been proposed, that they've said that they're going to end up bringing 3 in. This kind of thing probably wouldn't be possible without some of the big French teams and the big German teams. I don't think that this is possible to do. I'm sure people are still gonna go because I get excited to see Tottenham and Barcelona play, or Juventus and Manchester City play. A couple of years ago, I went to a International Champions Cup game here in the U.S. Between Real Madrid and Juventus, and it was actually pretty fun. I was hoping to see some of these big names play, and that's what it was. So I don't think it's going to be possible to do this if they didn't pull in the German teams and the French teams. If those teams stay and they just participate in the Champions League, it's going to be very, very weird to see all of that kind of stuff. With all of that, then you are leaving out many of the smaller teams that actually get exposure during the group stages of the Champions League. I watch those games. Small teams like Ajax, who I'd never heard of before until they ended up going on a tear in the Champions League. Porto. They made it to I guess it's the quarterfinals of this year's Champions League. I probably would have never watched Porto. And now because I've searched Porto on my phone, I get Porto updates. I don't watch them necessarily, but I then go and I look and I see what's going on with them and everything like that. So the Champions League, the way that it works, is a really good thing, at least in my opinion. Now, for what it's worth, it doesn't really seem like there's a lot of support for this idea on Twitter. So kind of sounds to me like the fans aren't really going to be behind it. Personally, I like the system the way that it is. I don't want to see it changed. I also don't really know everything about all of this. So my opinion is not the most informed, I guess. And I don't really understand why these Big 12 teams want to change everything that's happening and the way things have gone for this long. It sounds as though, to me, it's a very, I guess, greedy reason for wanting to change. So I don't think that they should do it. And I kind of do feel as though UEFA should stick to what it is that they're saying and kind of force these teams to keep what we're doing right now. I would hate to see something like European soccer turn into something like an American sport. And it's essentially just, I get it, it's all driven by money as it is now. I would hate for it to be nothing but money. So anyway, I am curious to see what happens with this moving forward. And that's all I really have for today. Be sure to like, share, comment, and subscribe.